Charles, people are up in arms about Mame Dummi.
As they should be, as they should be. I mean, I was just while we were preparing, I was musing, and I came up with a thought which I think might resonate with the viewers and with you. When I was a little kid, I remember distinctly, I've talked about this before, getting my first made in Japan piece of crap toy. I think I got it on Canal Street, actually. I think we went down to Chinatown for a meal, and then we're wandering back, and my parents said, "Hey, why don't you can have anything you want in this shop." So I buy it, and I take it out, and it breaks in like a minute. It's a little car, a wind-up car. And then it was indelible in my mind that anything made in Japan was crap back then. And indeed, the first Japanese cars were crap. They were kind of a step up from a motorcycle, barely. But then the Japanese got their act together, and now they're able to produce, and that this is now 65 years later or whatever, or before then, of course. They're able to produce high quality goods, not so much service, other than in a restaurant. I don't know of a skilled Japanese consulting firm or data management firm or investment bank. But now, unbeknownst to us, and I think in my case, having been raised by a mother who was actually born in Portugal and was fond of talking about how European civilization was so much more advanced than American, and there's a lot to learn about how Europeans manage families and this and that, and society, I think I've come to realize that, made in Europe is garbage. And Mamdani may have been born in Uganda, but his policies are made in Europe. They have never worked anywhere in Europe or anywhere else in the world. And now we have this blithering idiot we were saved from, Kamala Harris, suggesting that you lower the voting age to 16. I mean, the voting age currently, in theory, in New York is 18. Look what you get, if you get a Mame Dummi victory here. I mean, these are people 18 and up are very close to voting for an incompetent anti-Semite who is pretending, he's lying his way through this campaign. If he does win, the instant he wins, he's going to go hard left. And, he will have the power to push the Department of Taxation in New York City to go after organizations and people that he doesn't like. He could follow the Arctic Frost playbook in New York City. He will probably have to pay off those who put him in power with all kinds of no-bid contracts. And the city is I would argue right now, if you sent in a real accounting firm and said, no, forget this government accounting where you don't check, I think it's cash basis accounting. I don't think they look at accruals, meaning they don't count the contributions that need to be put aside to pay for these monstrous pensions that city employees get when the private sector doesn't get it. So, we're days away from the spectacle of a democracy imposing a buffoon, a corrupt, incompetent buffoon, as they say out west, over top $120 billion a year budget. I mean, I wouldn't let this guy drive a $35,000 car, let alone, he's a moron. He's a dangerous, smug moron who is going to be installed now. People talk about protecting our democracy. In the first place, the United States is not a democracy. It's a constitutional republic. Check it out for yourselves. And, what we have here is one-party rule in a city that is following Marxist and European foolish socialist principles. It's been doing so for decades. We have a housing shortage because we have rent control and onerous obstacles to putting up buildings in New York City. The real estate barons in New York City have the politicians under their thumbs. We have way too many tax-exempt institutions in New York City that don't pay local taxes. And this guy, I mean, he really is a dangerous fool, and that the Democrat Party could get to this place where not only do you have Mame Dummi poised to say that he's won a clear mandate to impose socialism, which really means in his mind Marxism, is preposterous. It's absolutely preposterous. And I hope there are different schools of thought about what's going on. The pollsters who got every recent poll wrong are saying that the dummy is up by 15 points. Others are looking at early voting and saying, "Now, wait a minute, early voting is surging here. What's really going on? Could it be that there are a large number of people, minorities actually, blacks, Asians, Indians, and others, who understand how socialism has wrecked the Caribbean and Europe and elsewhere, and that actually there'll be a surprise upset." I don't think that's going to happen because unfortunately there are two people running against Mame Dummi, and he could well eke out a victory here. But and it is just he is there are many questions about how he gained citizenship. You can't, of course, judge a candidate by his parents. On the other hand, parents do shape the way you think. And Mame Dummi's father is a kook. I mean, he's a Columbia professor kook who said some very nasty things. And he basically said, from memory, that Hitler was a product of following the way Abraham Lincoln thinks. I mean, imagine saying something that's stupid. Truly, pathetically stupid and dangerous. And this guy has a tenured professorship at Columbia. Meanwhile, his mother is a filmmaker. He didn't exactly grow up poor in Uganda. And it's just laughable to me that people would actually think, with the city about to go bankrupt at its current spending levels, that giving free buses for all and having the government run supermarkets, because of course the government has done such a good job of running everything, and supermarkets, the good ones, don't make that much money.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just pathetically stupid. It would be like saying, this year what we're going to do is we're going to let anybody who can speak, any child who's 2 years, and let's say from 2 until 8, you guys are going to decide who's going to be running the city, and we'll let the 8-year-old be mayor, and borough president. I mean, that's
Free
what we're
candy.
doing here. And the fact that that Elizabeth, sitting bullshit Warren, walking bullshit Warren, the fake Indian, could fly in, and Hakeem Jeffries takes off his sombrero and flies in, and other morons like Bernie Sanders and AOC embrace this idiot, and that nobody in the Democratic Party can stand up tall and say, "Listen, you are embracing 20% of the national electorate here, maybe 15%. You promote this democratic socialist bullshit, and we will never be in power again as the Democrat Party." That's before when the focus is Mame Dummi, but you also have that idiot in Seattle who's also a democratic socialist, and the other idiot Somali who I had forgotten, Bob Bishop, the renowned forensic investigator out there in San Antonio. He did a lot of work on the charity that this guy, this Feeding Our Future or whatever it's called, charity in Minneapolis, that stole something like $250 million. This guy who's running for mayor and likely could win was centrally involved in that crooked charity. It's just, it really is remarkable to me how pathetically stupid people are in New York. And I go back as well. I'm not saying that Mame Dummi is Hitler. I'm not saying that. I'm not even suggesting it. But what I will say is, when I was young, I asked my parents, remember my father's side of the family is German American. And I asked, how could Jews remain in Germany as Hitler rose to power following 1931, he began to gain power. How, as a Jewish person, could you stay in Germany with Hitler on the rise? When you could read, smart enough to read, you could read Mein Kampf. He laid out in that book, what his views were, well before he took power. How could you stay in Germany? And I ask the same thing now, not because I think this guy would do what Hitler did, but I think precisely, with concentration camps and things like that. But his economic policies are policies in quotes are absurd. He, a 34-year-old person who I don't think he's even worked as a waiter or, in a business where he had to meet payroll. He has decided that he doesn't like billionaires, that there shouldn't be billionaires. Well, fuck a vu. Go back to Uganda.
Except for his
How many
family.
billionaires have been created in Uganda? Probably, other than by stealing money.
Right.
And so this guy, and the danger here, the people on the left who have proven, like you could take a moron and make that person president. They did it with a Republican, W. Bush, and they did it with Obama. So the people who pull the strings in the large Western governments understand that, the people do vote, but it's who counts the votes that matter. And that matters. And in a city like New York, yes, Mayor Bloomberg won running as a Republican, but he was a fake Republican. Eventually, he became a Democrat. He ran for president as a Democrat. So this is very dangerous, and the elites and what passes for legacy media are going to work hard on trumpeting the successes in these elections should the dummy actually win. And they say, see, socialism, in the hotbed of capitalism, New York City, the people decided to reject capitalism and impose a moron democratic socialist as mayor. This is a repudiation of capitalism in the global capital of capitalism. That's the way they're going to sell it.
I think it's cheating, Charles. We've already got videos on X where this guy is saying that he's voted for Mamdani 6 times. I don't know if you had a chance to see this. Listen to this.
I'm here in New York, about to illegally vote for Zohran Mamdani 6 times. Yeah, 6.
Now, obviously, saying that isn't, he could just be joking around, but pretty stupid to claim you're about to commit a crime. And look, I don't doubt it. The security at these New York City polls, it's like 90-year-old women. You could probably vote 600 times. Nobody should do that.
Right. But I mean, when you think about New York has been able to wallpaper over, to put lipstick on a pig, because a large number of billionaires are or have been traditionally quite comfortable in New York City. And their capital, their spending allows the gigantic bureaucracy to get away with what it's getting away with. And remember that the rich pay an overwhelming majority of the actual taxes in New York City. You look at the huge pile of taxes that doesn't cover the budget, but much of that is paid by the very rich. And should this guy actually win, New York City, remember the times when the beginning of COVID, when we did all those walkarounds and there were no cars in the streets? That's what you're looking at.
Yeah. People leaving.
Yeah.
Charles, I must just correct one slight thing. You can't put lipstick on a pig, but you can roll a turd in glitter. And it reminds me of something else I wanted to tell you. Elon Musk was talking to Joe Rogan. I still don't understand why Elon Musk, he's just recently started complaining about Zohran Mamdani. He was in a good position to take some serious legal action against him. We had evidence that he was involved in legal activity against Tesla. But basically, Elon Musk was talking to Joe Rogan and talking about economic activity and how economists, it was right up your alley, how they have no idea how to gauge economic activity. And he told a story about 2 economists walking through the woods, and they come across a large pile of manure. And one of the economists says to the other economist, I'll pay you $100 to eat that pile of manure. So he does it. And he pays him the 100. And they keep walking, and they encounter another larger pile of manure. And the first guy says to the second guy, I'll pay you $100 to eat that pile of manure. So he says, okay. And he eats it. And then they realize they've just exchanged the same $100. And now they've both eaten ample piles of manure. And they said, well, but at least we had a lot of economic activity.
Well, yeah, actually, Simon Kuznets, I think, who may have won the first Nobel Prize in economics, is spelled Kuznet, either S or Z, I forget. He was tasked by the incoming president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, as one of the first things that Roosevelt did to design a system of accounting for national activity. And he did that. He took something, it was then called gross national product, which is a precursor of gross domestic product. And he wrote it's tough to find it now, but a very interesting report explaining what his approach was, including at the beginning, explaining the deficiencies in the approach. And when you read that report carefully, this guy Kuznets deserved a Nobel Prize in economics. He was a very smart man. But GNP and now GDP counts all government spending as productive. So when the government decides to spend, $1 trillion on green new scams, that's counted as a positive thing, when in reality, it's not a positive thing. The second thing GDP does is it counts government wages twice. It counts them in the government wages after taxes go to pay consumption, so they're counted in consumption. But there's also something called government consumer expenditures in the mix, and there I believe it's counted twice incorrectly. So there are lots of flaws in it. It also doesn't, if the government goes as we ultimately did first under Roosevelt in World War II, when the government spent a crazy amount of money fighting World War II relative to the private sector activity then, the GDP accounts do not penalize the decision to borrow money to finance a portion of the year's activities, and it should. So there are a lot of flaws in it, and Musk is right. And most people, you hear GDP, and most people are like, well, I don't want to admit that I don't know what that is. So what is it? Well, it's a measure of the economic progress in the year. Okay. No, it's not. It's like, driving a car at the speedometer says you're going 15 miles an hour, or it says you're going 150 miles an hour forward. In reality, you're going 15 miles per hour in reverse. That's what we have here. So the system of scoring the activities of a nation is badly flawed. Another thing it doesn't do is it doesn't track the cost of a bureaucracy relative to the output of the non-government sector. And that's something it should do. So there's a lot of flaws with this. And, clearly it hasn't worked. I mean, there's way too much debt now on the global economy. It's not just the U.S. that's screwed. I mean, the worst portion of the economy right now is Europe, which you should spell Y-U-R-P. And the Europeans, I mean, these people are really fucking crazy what they've been doing, with their socialism, bureaucracy on bureaucracy, deficit spending. And now with no armies, no fighting forces, they want us to fight a land war against Russia. Why does that make any sense? These are the same people who opposed U.S. Military adventures from Reagan forward. These are the people who didn't want us to deploy Pershing missiles in Europe. The very same people now say, hey, you know what we should do? Here's a great idea. Our economies are blowing up. We're not going to be able to heat our countries because we destroyed our nuclear reactors and we get most of our energy from Russia. Let's bomb Russia. And this is not, it's not like this is a new idea. They've been at it, pushing this idea for 5 years. I would, if I were Trump, I would even think at this point about not a Muslim ban, a European ban. We're not going to defend you. You can't come into our country. You're very dangerous.
Yeah.
It's not a laughing matter. I mean, they're opposing us around the world in different things we're trying to do. I've been to Europe now a number of times recently. It is depressing as hell. In England, overnight, of course they say, the problem is guns. They ban guns. And now, of course, what people are doing is using knives to kill people. So at, I think it was 6:15 p.m. or roughly that time, local time in the UK, some crazed lunatic with a knife stabbed 9 people. I don't know how many of them are dead yet. And the government's reaction is, we don't want to talk about this. Wow. No, don't suggest this could be terrorism. That's dangerous. I mean, these people, are all in for protecting the criminals and have no interest in ensuring and minimizing the number of victims. Government should be in the business of minimizing victims. You should try to eliminate violent crime. Instead, they're importing it. They're saying, you know what, I got an idea. Let's bring in a whole bunch of unvetted people who, many of whom, would like to destroy the country. And let's, just let them run riot. They don't have to work. They can get government benefits, bring in their families, and, make our streets unsafe. I mean, there should be, people are talking, I forget who it was. Somebody was talking, I think it's Eric Swalwell, I think, was saying that there needs to be, after Trump goes, there needs to be the same sort of thing that happened in Germany after Hitler left. The people who supported Hitler need to be named and shamed and shaved and put into orange jumpsuits and walked through the streets and humiliated and punished and jailed. Okay, that's pro-democracy small penis. And James Carville, people like that are thinking like that. Much as I loathe Mame Dummi, I don't think, unless he commits actual crimes for which he should be prosecuted, if you want to believe this socialist bullshit, have fun with your life. Buy some earth shoes, focus on DEI, make sure that you don't have 3 mansions, live in a 15-minute city. If that's the way you want to live, go do it. Just don't bother me. Don't tell me what to do. I'm going to live my life very differently. That's not the way these people think. They seem to think that they should control decisions, that the decisions you make affect them in some way. And you shouldn't be allowed to have a fossil fuel car. You shouldn't be allowed to work hard. There are not many billionaires other than those who inherit money, and those are a fraction of the billionaires, of the modern billionaire wealth. There are not many billionaires who get to be billionaires, working 2 days a week.
Now, Charles, look, we only have about 3 minutes until we head over to my pursuit of billions, which is the sponsored portion of the show. People can help me become a fractional billionaire by sponsoring on Crowdsource, thetruth.substack.com or subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, or by following me on X at JG_CSTT and subscribing there. You and I were talking the other day about this practice of lying for the furtherance of Islam, lying specifically to infidels in the furtherance of Islam.
Taqiyya.
I think it's taqiyya,
it's called taqiyya, and it's
I think that's what
depends how you spell
doing.
it. It's T-A, I think T-A-K-I-Q-A or something like this. I forget exactly, but if you just punch in T-A-K and lying or something, you should get to it.
T-A-Q.
But yes,
Q-I-Y-Y-A.
I was close.
Yeah. But this is, I think, what Zoran is doing, lying to everybody so that he can have this, globalizing the intifada in New York.
It's outrageous. And anything, if we have that. I mean, the FBI basically has that.
Yes.
It's okay for the FBI to lie to you, but you can't lie to them. This is ridiculous. Absolutely really ridiculous idea.
Speaking of the FBI lying, Joe Hoft had a pretty interesting story today about, I think he's got it on joehoft.com. It was, Comey's attorney was part of the team. This is a huge exclusive to Joe Hoft. Pat Fitzgerald could have helped prevent 9/11, but instead chose to cover up the crimes with mob informants. I think I agree with a lot of what Joe is saying here, because it goes back to, first of all, Svetlana Lakova, I'm very suspicious of. She was represented by Stephen Biss. And again, all of this seems to be centered around really hiding the truth of what happened on 9/11, but it's talking about this alleged friendship between Ramzi Youssef and FBI informant Gregory Scarpa, who was allegedly in jail passing notes to the guy. This goes into some detail talking about Valerie Caproni. I mean, it's interesting. Yeah, because, all this stuff with Comey, and I mean, it makes sense that if I am creating Crowdsource the Truth and having guests who are going to help people like you and others who are going to help people understand the crimes of the Clintons and the crimes and things that these people have been trying to cover up. So this is talking about how they did this to basically sink Lindley DeVecchio, the former FBI agent who I interviewed, who was entangled in this whole thing. But the Eastern District of New York, Andrew Weissman, Valerie Caproni, all of these rogues are still actively covering all this. We'll talk about it some more on the other side here when we go to the sponsor exclusive segment. Stay with us, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Check out that Joe Hoft piece, and we'll be right back.